Brilliant little tool. Much better. Okay, so first things first. I'm Mike from Rise Above Ruin, and I'm going to show you some basic tips on how to color correct your footage to make it look a million times better. These are very basic tools. Color correction takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes some tweaking. There's a lot behind it. But this is going to give you a basic look as to how to make it look that much better. So let's get to it. First of all, let's launch the program. So, in this particular case, I'm using Adobe. No, I'm not using it. I'm using Final Cut for this example. However, this information generally translates one to the other. Like, the color correction in general is just a rule of thumb. You've got to use your eyes and your common sense, the basic look of the video of what you're going for. Sometimes you want it to look a certain way versus another way. Like, a lot of this, you just need to play with the settings. But as soon as you understand those settings, it can be a lot of fun. Okay, so this is our basic clip. It's nothing too exciting. Just an unboxing video of a mattress. But this is the kind of work I do, so it's a good shot to have the example. So first thing you want to note is that the fact that this particular footage, you can already see, you know, it doesn't look overly bad, but I want to make it look better. So the first thing I'm going to do, you know, for an unboxing video, it's not that bad, but I want it to look better. I want it to look higher quality. I want it to look on point. The first thing I'm going to do is we want to click this little button down here. And you want to make sure color's selected. You can go to all video, but color is what it's under. Color correction is what you need. So we're just going to drag that onto the clip. Boom, nothing's going to happen. For those of you that do know Final Cut, might be a little bit slow for you, but for those that don't, we're going over some basic features here and there. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go over here on the right where you've got your color correction tool, and you want to click this little arrow, opens up, and you get these three tabs: color, saturation, and exposure. So we're not actually going to touch these right now, but you want to make sure that exposure is the one selected, because that's the one we're going to be looking at first. And one of the best keyboard commands, or the most useful keyboard commands you could ever know, is Command 7, okay? And if you don't want to press Command 7 for whatever reason, it's under View up here, and it's Video Scopes. Although, because I've got it open, it says Hide, but we'll see it there. Show Video Scopes, there you go. And there you have it. Very exciting, I know. Right, this might look complicated. It's actually very, very simple. Okay, so let's start from the top. So basically anything over 100 is considered overexposed. Like if there's something in the video that is overexposed, it will be over this 100 mark. And similarly, anything under the 0 mark will be underexposed. So you'll see this is sitting quite nicely on this line, so actually it's not that underexposed at all. But you will see here it's overexposed. Okay, so the basic understanding of this is the fact that from left to right on here is from left to right on the video. So this section here is like this door frame, and this here just behind Jason. And then as we move over here, this bit that's overexposed, to understand what it is that's overexposed, you can see it's the window section here. This is overexposed. And as you play through the footage or scrub through the footage, you'll see it moves. You'll see that it moves because Jen and Jason are moving in the shot. Okay, so this is just a visual representation of this, just in Luma form. because this is what it is, right? This is what it is. So now you kind of vaguely understand what it is. How do I use this to fix my footage or make it look better? Okay, so first things first is generally you don't want anything over 100 because it's overexposed, as I said, right? So we're going to bring down these levels here. You can see even here there's a little bit, but we'll bring it down. So moving back over to our exposure tab. So because it's an overexposure and it's a highlight in this particular case, we want to bring the highlights down, right? And you'll see, right? Don't look at the picture on the right, look at the picture on the left, okay? But when you lower it, it'll be under 100, and then once you look to the right again, you'll see, yeah, it looks better, right? It looks a little less it looks a little bit less than what you're expecting, okay? So that's good, that's great, right? And same thing applies with the shadows. If this was, for example, under the line, it would be underexposed, so you want to raise your shadows up, right? As you can see, because that is underexposed. So what you would do is you'd raise it so the line sits in here. So generally, rule of thumb is you want to keep it between 0 and 100. Anything higher or lower than those is it's just not going to look good. Now, there are some exceptions, like maybe you're going for a certain stylized effect, or I don't know what your reasons are for it, but generally you don't want to go under 0 or over 100. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. If you click this little button up here, and you click this little tick, you'll see the differences, okay? Not a huge amount, but it looks better. It looks a little more realistic, I guess. It looks better. Right, so next thing I'm going to want to do is actually go over to color, because as you can see here, I don't know, maybe some of you don't see it, but for those that you are looking for it, it looks very orange, it looks very yellow, the footage looks wrong when it comes to coloring. And this is where the color correction comes in a bit more into play. Now, the reason I said you want to go to exposure first and you want to do exposure first because you edit in layers. So you don't generally edit color before exposure, because if the exposure is wrong, the color's just not going to be right. It's not going to match the footage. So what you want to do is the exposure first, and then once you have the exposure locked in, you then move on to color correction. And this is the color tab here. Okay. So just a basic rundown of this. The color tab this is the global colors color for the footage. This is the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. Just as in exposure, the only difference is you now have this on top of those. So this particular global thing, 9 times out of 10 is going to fix your footage without you having to touch those shadows, midtones, and highlights. Just bear in mind you can edit them. So now we're in this section. How do I fix the colors? Because as you can see, it's going to change the video colors. And obviously, as I was explaining before, as you adjust the colors, it's going to adjust the exposure levels and everything independently, which again, you don't want to touch this before you've attacked exposure. You want to attack exposure first, and then you basically tweak it afterwards. So a lot of people do this by eye, and I'm like, oh, that looks a bit better. But what you want to generally do is you want to click on this little button here. Again, if you haven't got this window back up, you want to Command 7 to bring it up. And it's Vector Scope. Okay, so this is another little tool that is so good. I want you to learn how to use this because this is actually a very useful tool to have. So what's happening here? Okay, so it's analyzing the entire shot, or not the entire shot, but this particular frame it's analyzing. So as you'll see, our footage is yellow or orange because these colors are bleeding out into the red and yellow section. You'll see that this particular shot, it's basically saying, yeah, it looks this way because That's how it was shot. That's how it looks. And this could be many reasons. It could be the lighting in the room. It could be the reflection off the walls. Maybe you've got a certain light. Like if a light bounces off walls, you need to have a basic understanding of how lighting works and why lighting is so important. Is because if a light bounces off a wall, it's going to reflect that kind of color back on you, and it's going to be very subtle. But at the end of the day, you're going to get stuff like this. Lighting is very important. Very, very, very important. But we can fix this. We can fix this. So basically, it's bleeding into these sections. So what we want to do is we want to go the opposite way. We want to go towards blue, because blue is the opposite end of red and yellow, right? So we want to pull the colour out of there and into blue. So what we would do is we would find, and you can see it's moving about here, we want to find the level where it's pushing into the other section, and as you can see it's pushing in here, around here. So actually, that looks quite good. Now, one thing you need to understand is the fact that even though it's bleeding into here, that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is where the visual representation comes in, because to my eyes, this looks much better. But you can still see that we're still having some bleeding into the oranges and the reds. The reason is because this particular case, there's skin tones, right? There's skin tones in this. You've got this like autumny kind of picture on the wall. You've got this gold frame here, and even the walls are a little bit warmer toned, right? So you're going to naturally see that in footage. You're going to always see that. You're going to always see it bleeding towards one thing. So this is just a rule of thumb. You want to play about with it, and your eyes are going to do the rest of the work. But this is generally, you can kind of see how this is going to work. So you want to bring it out more into the blue, but only enough so it looks right. Because you don't want to bring it down all the way and then realize, well, mostly it's more in the center now, but now look at the footage. It looks blue. It looks washed out. It looks horrible. So you actually want to do it to a level where your eyes can kind of adjust, and this is where you probably need to take your time, because color correction, it takes time. It takes time to do. So you want to give yourself time to be able to do that. So in this particular case, I actually really think this looks better, right? Now, in some cases you will find that this isn't very obvious, or you're not seeing the transition very well, and you can tweak this by going to the saturation tab. So if you go to the saturation, just bump this all the way up, and it'll just enlarge this, because obviously now it's oversaturated. You're not going to use it like this, but you can see where the highlights of, or the tone, or the shadows, or whatever you're using, like they're bleeding in. So you'll see again where these kind of colors come from. So that's how you can, and then obviously go back to color tab and you can edit it and play about with it and be like, okay, that looks good. Saturation, bring that back down to, let's just put that back to 0. Right, looks good, yeah? Okay, so if we go back here, press Command 7 to get rid of that, because we want to see the full picture right now. Let's take the color correction off. Already, can you see, it looks better. I think that's looking pretty good. Now, there are some things we can do to fix this further, and that's under the Saturations tab. And what I want to do is I want to bring this kind of color in looks wrong, like there's still something off, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to drag the highlights and we're going to drag them down, and you'll see that it looks very washed out now. But then what we do is we bring up the saturation levels globally, so the midtones and the shadows are going up together. This highlights, get rid of that, and what we're doing is we're essentially taking out the highlights from the image. So again, that orangey kind of tone, or the blue kind of tone, you'll see here, right? It's too much, right? It's too much here, because everything's blown out, like 50%. All of these are moving with 50%, all of these are moving 50%. We now reduce the highlights. we're pulling the color back out of the highlights, right? So you'll see the vector scope, it becomes a smaller dot. And again, you want to play with your footage and make sure it looks right, but overall, this is the result, okay? So straight away, it looks tons better. And obviously this is just a simple clip, there's nothing particularly special about it. But you'll see that the color correction on it just looks a million times better. And ultimately, you're going to get a much better looking image. And it's all from that magic Command 7 button. Okay? That's basically it. That's basically it. From a basic perspective, this is all you will need to do to make your footage look a million times better. And again, I mean, the proof is there. It looks better. It looks more real. It looks more stylized. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It just looks better, right? And this is a very basic way of how you can make your footage look better. And color is a huge part of that. Okay? It's a huge part of that. Okay. That's it, that's everything. That's me done for the day. That's a pretty standard introduction, I would say, into color correction. That's giving you the tools that you need to succeed, or the tools that you need to make something just stand out a bit more. Thank you so much if you managed to watch this all the way to the end and listen to me just moan. Did I moan? I don't think I moaned much in this video. I usually moan a lot. I'm British, so in my nature. If you have any comments whatsoever, you know where to leave them, and also a like if possible. You know, it does help. It helps quite a bit. Like my videos, please. You know, it's good enough if you watched it at all. Hopefully this helped someone out there. I don't know. These are some of the techniques that you need to just create better looking videos, and this is just one of them. So you guys have, as always, been great. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Mike from Rise Above Ruin. Until next time, I'll see you later.